Have you ever wondered what it looks like when a project fails on a truly epic historical scale? We're talking about an attempt to build the world's largest civilian computer system and watching it completely fall apart. Today, we're diving deep into a case study that's become a legend in business schools, a story of massive ambition, total chaos, and a price tag that is, frankly, mind-blowing.
10 billion pounds. Just take a second and look at that number. That's what we're talking about for the final cost. This was for a project that was supposed to save money and revolutionize Britain's National Health Service. The scale of the spending here is, well, it's almost hard to comprehend.
And that, right there, is the big question. How on earth did a project with such a noble goal, a digital, life-saving health service, end up as a global cautionary tale? How did it go so wrong? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get our heads around the sheer size of this disaster. Then, we'll walk through the timeline, watching it unravel year by year. After that, and this is the juicy part, we're going to dig into the 4 fatal flaws that really sunk the ship. And finally, we'll pull out the huge lessons learned and tee up some critical questions for you as future leaders. You know, every colossal failure starts with a beautiful dream. And back in 2002, the UK government's dream was huge. They called it the National Programme for IT, or NPFIT. The pitch was incredible, a world-first project to drag the entire NHS into the digital age. The vision was spectacular. The reality? Oh boy, the reality was anything but. Just look at the gap between the dream and the reality. It's insane. On one side, you have this incredible vision, one single electronic health record for every person in the country. E-prescriptions, easy online booking, a whole new world of efficient patient care. And on the other side, a decade later, you have official reports calling it a colossal failure and, get this, one of the worst contracting fiascos in history. The difference between what was promised and what was delivered is just breathtaking.
So how does a dream that big actually die? Well, it wasn't one clean shot. It was more like a slow, agonizing bleed out over almost 10 years. This timeline really tells the story of how it all fell apart, step by painful step.
So it all kicks off in 2002 with this huge optimistic announcement. But check out 2003, the first critical mistake. They rushed to sign massive 10-year contracts at unprecedented speed. They're sprinting before they even know where the finish line is. By 2006, the first major crack appears. Accenture, a giant IT supplier, just walks away. That's a huge red flag waving right there. A year later, Parliament itself is screaming disaster. Then in 2008, another huge supplier, Fujitsu, gets the boot. So by the time the government officially pulls the plug in 2011, it was really just putting a ghost out of its misery.
And this quote just says it all. This wasn't some surprise failure that came out of nowhere. This is the government's own watchdog committee in 2007, a full 4 years before the project was officially killed, saying that the biggest IT project in the world was becoming the biggest disaster. I mean, the warning sirens were deafening and they were going off really, really early.
Okay, so we've seen the what and the when. Now we get to the real meat of this explainer, the why. Why did a project with this much political muscle and a nearly bottomless budget fail so completely? Well, when you break it all down, it comes back to 4 fatal flaws in how it was run.
Think of these as the 4 legs of the table. If one is wobbly, you've got a problem. In this case, all 4 were rotten from the start. The very structure of the project was broken. The planning was a chaotic rush job. The amazing benefits they promised never showed up. And the basic business case, the very reason for doing it, was built on fantasy. Let's tackle each one of these.
Flaw number 1 was the organization. The whole thing was incredibly top-down. You had a tiny team in London making all the decisions and trying to force a one-size-fits-all solution onto thousands of unique hospitals across the country. And the result? The actual users, the doctors, the nurses, they had no say. They felt totally ignored. This wasn't a project being done with them, it was something being done to them. And that created a wall of resistance before they'd even started.
And this leads right into the second flaw, the so-called planning. Rushing from a vague idea to signing these ironclad billion-pound contracts in a single year was just unbelievably reckless. There was no time to talk to the people who would use the system, no time to build a prototype, no time for testing. It's like they decided to build the most complex airplane in history, but they started construction mid-flight without ever asking the pilots what the controls should do. It was doomed.
And then there's this. Honestly, this might be the most shocking slide of them all.
After all that time, all that turmoil, and all those billions of pounds, an official audit found that an incredible 98% of the promised benefits just never happened. They vanished. All that talk about making patients safer, making the system more efficient, it was basically fiction. That 2% of realized benefits it's a rounding error on a disaster.
And the fourth and final flaw was the business case itself, the foundation of the whole thing. It began with a budget that was wildly optimistic, and then it almost doubled. It was based on this fantasy assumption that everything would go perfectly smoothly, completely ignoring huge risks like vendors failing or users hating the system. So instead of creating savings, it became this perfect example of commitment bias, that psychological trap where you keep pouring billions into a failing project because you just can't admit how much you've already wasted.
So, after a decade of chaos, what was actually left when the dust settled? What's the final score on this £10 billion gamble? Let's look at the financial wreckage and the one lesson that rises above it all.
This chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? That big bar on the left, that's the total cost, over £10 billion. Now look at that tiny little bar next to it. That's the actual tangible value that the government could find, maybe $2 billion, on a good day. That huge empty space between them, that's the value gap. That's a catastrophic, multi-billion-pound failure to deliver.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway, the lesson that was paid for with £10 billion. A grand vision is beautiful, but it's totally worthless if you don't have a realistic, flexible plan to make it happen. And most importantly, if you don't build that plan with the people who will actually live with the results, your stakeholders, your project is almost certainly going to fail. That is the lesson here.
Okay, now let's make this personal. For every one of you who's going to lead a team or a company or a massive project one day, the real value of a case study like this is asking yourself, seriously, what would I have done differently?
So really think about it. If you were in charge, how would you have set things up to actually listen to the people on the front lines? What kind of system would you have put in place to check month after month if you were actually delivering real value or just burning cash? And here's the really tough one. How do you, as a leader, fight that human instinct to double down on a mistake, to stop a runaway train before it goes completely off the cliff?
And that really is the final critical question we're left with. When the stakes are this high and billions have already been spent and your reputation is on the line, what does real leadership courage look like? Is it being the one who never gives up? Or is it being the one who has the strength to stand up in front of everyone and say, stop, we got this wrong? That's the £10 billion question this case leaves for all of us.